study the file system block. And I might spend some time before that trying to figure out how to see uh, to clean these strings here. I think that the reason why I'm getting this, I was able to fix the memory leak of the objects. I figured out the problem was on the icon sidebar. As far as I know right now, it seems to be fixed. And the other issue was that I wasn't cleaning up the last node after running the Cortex because of the index that I put there on the function. It had to be equal to 0, and I just put greater than 0. So yeah, but I'm still getting these errors here, and I tried. Last thing that I tried now was just to put this file in the line because I was looking to the function that they use to print what strings are orphans. As far as I understand now, these are the strings that were not cleaned properly. So I'm trying to figure out where do they come from. So I can, there's two of them, this two here. These three show up on when I run without the editor flag, and I think that all of them show up when I run with the editor flag. And this shoe right here, I figure out that they are coming from the export presets class, but they are static variables, and I didn't uh, think about any solution to see if I can clean them. But the other ones I still haven't figured out, and I think that most likely they're coming from the editor thing, or from the theme DB, which is the main class that they use to manage the themes. Because they initialized there, I was looking to the main setup and the main start function, and it seems that they initialized the thing there, and those are the only places where the string names, these string names show up. So I'm not really sure, but it's not that big of a deal. So I'm not really sure what should do. If I should spend a bunch of time trying to solve this, or if I should just move on, because it is kind of annoying. I would like to not have any errors, but yeah. It's basically the message that they put here, and they just change to put the file online. But also, I assume that this would happen, and it is kind of annoying because the reason why I got this idea is because of the macro here, but the macro is different because they are putting on the macro. So I assume it's gonna put the file in the line at the place you put the macro, because the macro copy pastes the code. So based on the way that I did there, is always gonna show the same file online because I'm just putting inside of the function. And I think that like the only way to maybe trying to do this is to change the constructor, because otherwise you have to change all the places that they initialize string name, which is not possible, I think. Just like a waste of time. So I think that the only way is to, and the issue is I'm not really sure. The way that I did now seems to be printing, but there are several different constructors. I think this one obviously is gonna accept, so he's gonna call another constructor to build the arguments, so it doesn't need anything. I think this constructor is the main one, and the other constructors use are called this one. And then they save the string names on a table, which is a static variable, which is the one that they use there to print a message. And the only part I changed was these two lines here, and the other one with the print statement. Maybe one thing that I can try just to see what happens is to call, I don't remember which one it is. I think it's this one as the thing. So they have a clear function, which is the one that cleans everything. The problem with puts, I was thinking about calling this on the destructor there, because it seems that it comes from here, because that's the only place where it uses string names with the patterns there of the message. But the issue is obviously it might break everything, because the destructor is going to take into account the life cycle, and then the constructor doesn't do anything, so that's the problem there. And the other ones is static variable, so I'm not really sure how to, if there is a way, because the other one doesn't call anything on the destructor as well, I think. Or maybe I think I closed the file. But obviously it's easy to find, just search for the string. And I guess I can put there just to see what happens. It doesn't matter. If it breaks, I just go back. The other thing that's happened is that they released the 4.3 version, I think. And I was thinking about moving. So based on the executable, I was able to run the executable, and it looks like they fixed the annoying error with the font. So I was trying to build, but the problem is when I built, it broke the build, like it just crashes. So I assume that there's probably an error, or maybe I did something wrong. But I think there's a segmentation fault on the 4.3 based on the way that I was building there. So I just basically ran the same command. I tried to run the dev build and the normal, like platform Windows build, both for the editor version. Both editor builds, one with the dev and the other one with the platform Windows, and they both just crashed on the project manager. So I'm not really sure what is going on. because obviously the executable that they provide there is working on the website, so might be something that I'm doing that doesn't work. It's basically here. So this class here. It looks like these strings are not cleaned properly when you run. They are static variables. And there is a function to clean, which is the one that shows the message, I think, on the string name. But the problem is that the function is private. So I assume that you shouldn't call. So I'm not really sure what is the best way, because I think that they designed this so that it automatically cleans itself, but on the constructor here you run unwraps and then probably the engine cleans it up when there's no references. But not really sure. I think I tried to use LLMs as well to see, but they didn't give any. They didn't give a good answer, I think. And we're gonna try again. Maybe if I just delete them. Hmm. Now, so it's saying for me to make them empty. Let me try this first, and then I'm going to see if I can call mem delete. I'm gonna do this once first. And I think that's probably not gonna work. It's still gonna complain. And the most annoying ones are these ones. The texture today, I'm not really sure because it's saying that there's shoe texture to these strings. And probably the best way to do it would probably be if I could store the line and the file. That would be the easiest way. So on the string name initialization, store the file and the name somehow, and then on the log message, just put the file and the name. Then I was gonna be able to know for sure that those places are the ones that the string is having a problem, and then I can think about how to deal with the thing. But I think it has to be on the thing, probably. But it's weird because this one should be deleting the string right after. As far as I understand right now, whenever you pass a string like this, it's gonna depend on the type you have on the thing that you are passing the string on. So this case probably gonna be string name. So it's string here. So it can't be this place because it's string. But the way that it's gonna work is that it's gonna be dependent on the structure of the class. So the when you pass the string, the compiler is gonna call the constructor of the class, and when the function finishes executing, it goes out of the stack, I think, and it calls the destructor for the classes. So it should be automatically removing, I think. That's the thing that is. In the other places, it's kind of hard to know. Because the weird thing is that if you were these other places here, then it would be more than two instances, I think. So it has to be a place that is only two instances, and it has to be a place that it runs on the setup or like on any of the main functions whenever you don't pass the editor flag. I guess it could be this maybe. No, just string. Hmm. I think that fixed. It's not showing there anymore. But the weird thing now is that it's showing more than one place. Hmm. Oh, this one is showing a difference. Thing. Saying core editor settings. Oh, also the other thing that I changed here, I'm not really sure if this solved the problem. I think it was another problem. I changed the way that I'm doing this thing here so that I have a scroll container instead of a panel. So scroll container requires another thing as a child. And the reason why I put in scroll container is because I think it's the easiest way to be able to put any elements that I want inside of the panel. inside of the panel. I think that on the icon sidebar as well, I'm gonna put some logic there to change the minimum size, but the problem is that I want to be able to put anything that I want, and it has to be resizable in the same way that this is resizable. So I think the scroll container is probably gonna be like the easiest solution for this. But when I add a child of a child using the iChild external, then it wasn't adding to the scene, and the reason why is because of the way that I'm setting the owner. So in order for the nodes to be saved on the scene, they have to have an owner. That's the reason why I put the code like this. So when I was adding this file system doc as a child of file system container before, I was adding file system container to content div. So at the moment that I was adding this as a child of the other one wasn't on the tree, so it wasn't finding the owner based on the way that I did this thing here. And then I remember that's was a similar reason why I'm setting this variable on both the node that is adding the other node as a child and on the child. So I thought it might be because of this that it wasn't working, but now I think that it's more likely that it was because of the order here. But it doesn't matter, I'm just gonna leave it like this because it doesn't matter anyway. And I think this one is probably correct. So I just changed the name as well so it's not confusing. But I guess the parent, if it doesn't have a parent, then it means that this is the root node. So I'm just setting the owner of the child as this. And if it does have a parent, then I get the parent of the parent. And I'm basically just finding the roots by traversing until I get to a node that doesn't have a parent, which is the root. Then I set the child and the current nodes, set the owner. I think I have to. So the way that this works is that you have to. The scroll container is only gonna show when the container shrinks past the point of the child. So, like in this case, in the beginning, it doesn't show anything because the scroll container doesn't have a minimum size. And if the scroll container minimum size is the same as the node you put as a child, then it's not gonna show the scroll as well because they have the same. So it only shows the scroll container if you, like the slider in the bottom, if the minimum size of the scroll container is lower than the minimum size of the element you're gonna pass. But I'm not really sure what is the best thing to do here, if it is to, because the other thing that I did here, as far as I remember, yeah, I'm setting the minimum, I'm resetting the minimum size of the thing that I'm gonna put there as a child of the target node, which is based on the name, to be the minimum size of the control. So like this would be the panel that I have there because I did based on the name. So whatever node has this name here is going to be the target. because I'm getting from the root. And then based on this target, I get the minimum size of the target, which is, it would be the panel. And then I'm just setting the minimum size of the content that I'm going to put there as the minimum size, but I'm not really sure if that's very good. Because I think that is either using this or the scroll container, because otherwise it defeats the point. So I think I'm gonna try to do it like this, where I'm not setting the minimum size. Because I think that the problem is if you update the minimum size of the thing that you're gonna put there, it might screw up some nodes that depend on the size, on the specific minimum size. So I think for that reason, it's probably better to do it like this. Then what's gonna happen is that depending on what kind of thing you put there, it's gonna change the minimum size, but it's just gonna show the slider at the bottom because it's a scroll container. So I was gonna see the editor settings. See. I also want to understand. I'm going to go over with the debugger without the, or with the flag to go with the editor to see, because I remember I put a breakpoint on the node class to see the name is empty thing. Maybe I should do that now because I do remember that it's related to editor settings. So I think what I have to do is probably uh, incorporate some logic that is gonna check for the variable that I put there, and then it's gonna update the editor settings whenever I run. Not really sure if that's possible. Either that or I always use the E flag, but I think that's like there's another problem. The other thing that I figure out is that I'm setting the main string there because of the way that the main starts or main setup works is based on the whether or not you have a main string. So based on the way that I set up the variable there that I'm using to run this entry point function, it's gonna think that is a game. And if it is a game, it's gonna try to get a package scene. It's gonna try to create a package scene, which is the class that they use to serialize or to use as a bridge between like caching the data, the state of the game, and the engine. So they do that based on the this configuration here. So if you don't have a main scene on the project, it breaks. It just gives a warning message because it can't find the can instantiate the package scene when it's trying to run the game. And I think it also runs the thing DB, but it doesn't run stuff related to the. It doesn't initialize the editor nodes or stuff related. I think it initializes some things related to the editor. Maybe not actually. So there's something going on when you run with the editor flag and when you don't run with the editor flag. It changes the settings and the cache on the editor, and then it starts giving the warning there because of the way that you save the scene or something like that. I want to figure this out. And because the thing is showing editor settings here. I'm just gonna erase the stuff that I did there on the string name, and I'm gonna think about whether or not it's worth it to spend some time thinking about whether I should change the constructor will find some other way to put the line in the file, so I can figure out where it is. I think that before I do that, I should try to clean up the theme using the function there. See if it's gonna work. Oh, I already have here. Yes. So I think that is probably one of the strings is probably this one, based on the message there. But I don't understand why. think I should spend more time studying the saver and the loader, because this part. So as far as I understand, the way that it works is that they initialize a bunch of classes, and each one of the classes is gonna be responsible for saving and loading different types of files. And I think this is probably very important because it happens all the time. And I think resources are the most annoying thing to deal with. So I don't understand very well how it works, but I do remember. I'm not really sure if the part that I think is responsible for this is the correct part, because it says like it is related to the script. Well, probably I'm gonna focus on solving this first. I'm just gonna run with the editor flag. I'll try to focus on cleaning the strings first, and then I'll see if I spend some time probably. Yeah, somewhere along here, I think. But it's kind of confusing because like I want to remember. I do remember some points I found the place where they load or they initialize the classes that work. Yeah, work with resource loaders and resource saver. But I don't remember really well where it is. But it's kind of annoying to understand, like, because there's a lot of stuff there. But I think that what basically they are doing is just creating a like small compiler or parser. So based on they generate tokens on the first part there, and then based on the tokens they generate the statements, and that's how they serialize everything. But I'm not really sure if it's worth it to. Because the main one of the main reasons why I wanted to spend more time is because initially I thought, and it's still kind of weird. Like on the icon sidebar class, in order to set the button with the texture, you need to create a resource. I think for all the textures you're gonna use is definitely gonna be a resource, I think. Or you use one of the standard classes that they have, which are the options, like the standard options that they show on the inspector. But those classes are probably gonna use the same stuff under the hood, I think. Or maybe not actually. All of them obviously are gonna use the buffers to draw the images. And they're gonna create resources. They're gonna create commands, I think, on the using canvas item, I think, or one canvas. There's a class that's specific for this. But I think that the one that I'm getting here, I got this one from the way that they do it. Like I think I went over the flow on the editor, setting manually the button, and then I figure out which way that they are using to initialize the or to set the icon on the button. And they basically use this as a resource here. And they use resource loader, and then they put the path of the file is selected. And the resource loader is the thing that's, I guess this is the part that I wanted to clarify more because it is very confusing. So like depending what kind of path you put there, what kind of resource it is, it's going to use a different class to load the resource. And I think loading is just parsing the resource. But if it is a texture, I wanted to understand more how does this work? Because obviously I think that what's happening is that they are getting the bytes of the file, And then based on the bytes, they are gonna create the texture coordinates, and they're gonna create a rectangle, I think. If it is a 2D, obviously, they create a rectangle and then they create the commands for Vulkan to draw. And I was getting an error here. Sometimes I get an error on this one, and I think it's because of the way that they cache the files. So the first time that you run, I think that they create another file that is the dots imports. And like if I change the name here of the, or I add another icon here, I think the first time that you run, it gives it an error because it doesn't have the imports or something like that. Like there's something weird going on with the cache on the editor and the way that I'm doing there. But the way that I'm doing, I think is correct. It's supposed to be that way. And I think it also works, but it only like it just displays the error message, but it still works. But I want to understand why they did it like this. I think obviously the more parts I study, like the easier it gets to understand everything. So I think I should. It's probably worth it to spend a bunch of time on the parts that are probably used most often. And I want to like now that I have a decent understanding of like a lot of parts, I want to understand more how the lower level works, like the connection between the servers and the high level classes. But I think it's probably like the thing is that it depends. I think some parts is very complicated because of the nuances, and it's kind of annoying to figure out how they do it. I think on the tax, I was spending some time studying the tax server and like to figure out the nuances of how they write the or create the buffers and stuff like that. It's kind of annoying, but it seems that it is easier on some parts to understand because all the classes use basically the same classes to draw and stuff. Is canvas something? I forgot the name, but they use I think that they use a macro to simplify calling the rendering server, and then based on the rendering server, they pass the ID of the resource, which is RID, so resource ID, and then based on that, they call the other class that is like the main class, and that class allocates a command, and based on the way that it allocates the command, it puts the class itself is going to put the commands on a vector, and I think later on that Vulkan or the rendering server is going to use Vulkan to put the commands on a queue. So that's another part that I'm trying to. I think it's probably a good idea to spend time trying to understand. Yeah, this is the macro, I think. Yeah, rendering device. There's a rendering device and rendering server. We need to clarify the relationship between them. These parts are kind of confusing to understand. I agree. Someone's saying that C++ is bloat. Yeah. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to see if I guess. It's very laggy now, so I'm gonna try Perplexity. I'm gonna ask what is the relationship between rendering device and rendering server. And I'm gonna probably spend more time. I think I'm going to put the breakpoints on the display server again, because I wanna clear my mind. I do remember that I have some. Maybe, problem is I draw a bunch of stuff on SketchDraw and I think I lost the place that I put this stuff. I do remember that I spent some time doing some flow charts to have the connection, and I think that the display server is gonna be the one that initializes stuff. So here it is, I think. Yeah, nice. So was this thing here? A display server initializes the rendering context driver. Yeah, so I knew, yeah, it is related to rendering device. So rendering display server initialize rendering device. Rendering device is the thing that has the Vulkan that initializes the Vulkan functionality. So I think rendering device is the class responsible for managing the Vulkan stuff, and then rendering server creates the bridge between the resources and the rendering device. I think that's what's going on. So it's probably rendering device in the end and rendering server on top of it. So it goes from the way that I'm thinking about it. Obviously, can be wrong. Or is canvas something here? I think like these are most high level classes that are gonna draw stuff. All the classes that draw anything on the screen, they're gonna use a class on the lower level that's gonna create the actual commands on the Vulkan to draw uh, the thing. So like basically create the information on the buffer. So they're just abstractions and this one is going to be canvas. There is different classes, which is kind of the thing that is confusing as well. There's canvas call or something. And then these classes, some of the classes also as well. On the pop-up menu is the one that oh no, the pop-up class that, it's not the pop-up menu, is the class that is responsible for creating the pop-ups. They call the display server directly, I think. Or don't remember if it's display server or if it's something related to displays. So maybe this is the hierarchy here. So this one calls this one, and then this one generates commands. And then maybe it goes here, or maybe goes directly. Here is rendering server. And then the rendering server communicates with the rendering device to actually draw stuff. But so far, I haven't seen anything directly using the. So as far as I understand, Vulkan has the swap chain, just like a gradient of images that uses to update the screen. It's just an evolution of the double buffering technique. So double buffering is similar to the way React works, where you build the stuff on one place, and then you replace with the old stuff that is showing on the screen. This allows you to update without changing anything directly on the screen. Just updates off, let's say. And then Vulkan is basically the same idea, but you have a gradient of images instead of just two. And that's called the swap chain. So I think that's the only one that I've seen is the commands, because I think the Vulkan works with commands and queues. To create commands, and then the commands are put on queues. And then based on the queues, it updates the swap chain. I think that's how it works. But I haven't seen anything directly related to the rendering device and rendering server. Because I think that obviously they're gonna work on different parts of the loop, I think. So if you put breakpoints inside of classes, you're only gonna be able to see the creation of commands, and then probably it draws everything on the same place, somewhere along the main iteration loop. But I do wanna remember. Because I think that's is gonna make it easier in my mind, sure. Hmm. Device driver. I think it's an abstract base class, and then depending what kind of driver you're using, you're gonna be using different classes. They have the Vulkan and Direct X, I think, and there's other ones for the other, I think, platforms. I think they use WebGL or WebGPU for the web, and I don't remember if there are other ones for the other platforms. So it seems that the rendering device is gonna be the class that creates the actual data, the buffers, and then the display server is an interface between that. I think the display server manages the window. The display server is the window, the rendering device is like the backend, which is the connection with the actual GPU, like the framework that is gonna manage the GPU data. I will continue. That's the place. Shit. The rendering device has the driver, and the driver creates the commands. Compute pipeline. Descriptor sense, I think, is just the same as geo attribute vertex you use to specify how Vulkan is going to read the buffer. So it seems that the part that I'm looking at now is going to be this one to create the pipeline. Then later it's probably gonna, when it adds the dependency, it's gonna do the other stuff maybe. And this is the last part. It's very complicated. And the most difficult parts, I think, it's not very hard to understand how it works. The problem is that there's so many things interconnected, and it's kind of hard to just looking at the source code to see how they are related to each other. That's the problem. So, but I think it's probably worth to spend time to like see the parts or spend more time studying the parts that repeat very often so that I can get rid of them like on my mind. So next time that I see, I understand, then like frees up space to focus on the other stuff. Map maps is just to create a hierarchy, I think. It creates different resolutions of the images, I think. I don't remember really well. Maybe it's something else. Hey, what's up? I'm trying to build a graph visualization, more like an IDE where I can visualize code on simulations. Like, that's the first thing that I'm trying to build, but I'm trying to build now something that allows me to build scenes on Godot from C++ source code. But the first thing that I'm trying to build is gonna be something like an IDE that I'm not really sure if I can open. That's right. That's gonna allow me to see the codes on a simulation. But I'm trying to understand more how, like I have this problem that I don't know which thing I should do now, to be honest. But I have this problem that I'm trying to solve, which is kind of annoying, that there are string names that are not being cleaned. So I'm trying to figure that out, but at the same time, like I'm kind of interested now or curious about like clarifying the other parts of the engine so that it's easier to understand everything. I think mainly the setup that I'm trying to understand now because it's related to the commands that I use there to be able to run the function that I'm running. So I want to understand more like how the relationship between the editor and how they cache everything and how do they set up the initial. I basically have a clear picture in my mind of the whole cycle. I think that's what I'm trying to achieve now. Because I already kind of understand, but I think that the main parts that are missing in the way that I understand is visualizing how it's gonna create, at what point it's gonna create the commands on the, what point it's gonna use Vulkan to actually draw this stuff on the screen, and like visualizing the pipeline in my mind of the relationship between classes. I have here some images. Don't remember really well. I think it's here that come from the documentation, but they are not very, like they are very good, but it's not enough to like be able to understand very well. I'm not really sure what's dynamic analysis, but maybe. I have something that I built on the front end that is very like I've built this a very long time ago on using on the browser because I didn't know C++ or anything. Like it's something that I wanted to build since I started learning how to code because I think it's obvious, it makes a lot of sense, and I couldn't find anything. The closest thing that I found was Python tutor, but it's not very good, and I think there's a lot more you can do. So I've been trying to build this stuff just to help me learn faster for a long time. But it's basically this. So like something similar to this, where I'm going to visualize the connection of codes on the simulation. That's the first thing I'm trying to build. So, but it's probably not gonna be like, because I'm more focused on having a system that I can generate scenes than to be attached to any specific thing. But the very first thing that I'm trying to build now is this thing here. Yeah, there are a lot of abstractions in Godot, but I spent a bunch of time studying already, so like it's kind of, I have a decent understanding of the parts that are more closer to the user, let's say the person that is using the nodes, to the higher abstraction, but the parts, like there's still a lot of black boxes. Like the audio server, I don't know very well. I don't know at all actually, the audio server. The networking also I don't know very well. And the parts of the Vulkan and the window management and this kind of stuff. So I think that's like clarifying more of that on my mind. It's gonna make it easier to debug everything else. So I think it's probably worth spending time. Because a lot of these issues with like leaking stuff is, or like having like understanding the setup very well of how everything is connected. It's gonna make it easier in the future. I'm probably gonna need, because I think the way that I'm doing things there is like there's a chance that I'm gonna have more errors like this, or that will want to draw stuff directly on the server, or like the physics engine as well, to understand more how it connects to the server. But the idea that I have is, I think I'm probably gonna do this very soon, where like I'm not putting the world environment doesn't show anything because I have to put other nodes to incorporate a 3D world into a GUI visualization. But it's basically the same principle that the editor works, where if you click on 3D, you can see the stuff here. So what I'm trying to do is have something closer or similar to an IDE where I have the icons, and then when you click the icons, it shows like a component, and then here I'm gonna have a like a file or basically to write code, and then on the sides I'm gonna have a 3D visualization, and then I wanna be able to see if I can connect both. And it looks like it's working with the scroll container. Yeah, the inheritance is very annoying as well to understand. So like this is the most difficult part, is because you rely on the on runtime to understand, because like the connection of everything you can only see when you're stepping over. That's kind of the annoying part. But I think slowly I'm like starting. It becomes more and more clear. Like it's more about figuring out what parts to tackle, and that's how I'm thinking about it now. Like once like when I see something very often, then I think it makes a lot more sense to just spend like a lot of time clarify that. Then when you clarify that, it opens up space to clarify everything else, and then slowly like you take over the understanding of everything. So it just gets easier and easier. There's other parts that I wanted to dive deeper into as well, is the multi-threading that they use. So I'm gonna search, like they use this standard library, but I don't understand very well. Multi-threading is kind of hard to picture because obviously the code is linear, but the threads are not. So kind of hard to think about when you're reading the code how it works, and how they have locks obviously to deal with the memory races to stop memory two threads to accessing the same memory, but it's kind of hard to understand what's going on the, because it is a black box, the implementation as well. So I'm gonna study this again, I think. We're just gonna off stream, I'm gonna search for videos about this. Start from the drawing API. Yeah, I already have a very good idea. I did this a long time ago, but it's basically this like small flow of how it works there. The display server windows is going to be the thing that initializes the window, and use a callback function that it sets up in the beginning. Depending on which operation system you're using, I think, it creates a different callback function, because obviously is an abstract base class. So it uses it declares the type as the abstract base class, so it's able to use the derived classes on runtime to initialize. And in the version that I have is on Windows, so it uses the display server windows and use the callback function from there. Then it creates the rendering context server from the display server, and then creates the rendering device. The rendering device is the thing that actually creates the vocal commands, and then it uses a third library to create the API between Vulkan and Godot, because Vulkan they use layers as well. And I think, yeah, on Vulkan you have the loader, and the loader is the thing that you have to create. So I think that the third party library that they use is the loader for Vulkan. It's basically an API between Godot and Vulkan, and it allows them to use a bunch of Vulkan functions that they provide to create the pipeline, I think. as far as I understand, that's how. The only thing that I don't know very well yet is the connection between the rendering server and the rendering device. Because most of the times they use the RS, I think, a macro, to call the rendering server, and then the rendering server is the thing that they usually call to draw stuff. So they call canvas something, then the canvas something calls the or sets up data on the rendering server. But then I don't know at what point the rendering server is gonna call or is gonna interact with the display server or the rendering device to draw this stuff. Because assume obviously it's gonna be on another part of the loop. So the classes just set up the commands, and then at some point in the loop, they're gonna. But I do remember there's a part there on the iteration where they have a comment that says that it is related to the drawing. So maybe I will step over now that parts to understand how at what moment do they use the rendering device. What's writing is not that hard. I think that it's still very hard for me to understand, like from the codes, like to, because I don't understand very well, like how does the operational system, like what is the connection between the threads, the operational system, and the hardware, and like in the context of the API that C++ provides. I think that's the part that I kind of struggled. Like I did spend a bunch of time studying. Like there's this very good, yeah. This I also wanna like this is probably the third time that I'm watching this now, and I want to watch this again from the beginning because it's so fucking good. It's one of the best lectures, probably the best that I found on the low level. And he explains that the pipeline, the data pipeline on the hardware, and I was watching this again for clarifying branch predictions. That is also encoded on the hardware with a simple like machine learning thing there. I forgot the name. But it's like there's a lot of stuff to remember, so I kind of forget like all the components. And when it comes to multi-threading, I think he talks about this part is also very confusing, but it's like you have SIMD, which is single instruction multiple data, which is basically the GPU. Because obviously if you have a loop, you're gonna run the same instruction a bunch of times, so you can do some stuff on the hardware to perform the same instruction on different parts, like on different data at the same time, and that optimizes the speed. And then you have the other configuration, which is the other way around, which is basically the trade-off between space and time. So I think on one situation you have like multiple instructions at the same time, and the other one is the space or something like that. Like this part's kind of confusing to me still. And then obviously in order to prevent the data from being accessed from different threads at the same time, that's the job of the CPU, which you basically use control logic and decoders to figure out. But I don't like this part. He doesn't talk about the connection between this and C++, like the libraries. So this part I don't understand very well. How C++ is gonna translate everything. I know that malloc is very complicated. Based on another lecture that I've seen from another guy, it seems like I think I had a picture, but I forgot where it is. But there's like a bunch of stuff that goes on malloc to actually allocate memory, so it's kind of annoying. CPP preference, trying to repair. Yeah, mutex is should lock the threads, right? I think. So game max. The kernel will run a process if you implement threading CPP and inside the process. And when you eat it. Yeah, I think I understand that, but like the part that is hard for me to understand is like it's not so much how it works, is like it's hard to get into the person that created the codes. Like it's hard to get into their mind and understand the like the reason behind why do they put the threads at the points that they put. That makes sense, because there's a lot of parts of the code that don't have a thread, And then there's a lot of parts that they lock the threads. So like how does that work? Like I guess this is a part that I'm struggling to understand. Yeah, I think I understand that as well. Like it's kind of the same idea, but it is a different context, right? So like SIMD, I think is more on the hardware, and then threads. I think threads can be on the hardware as well, but I think it's more probably abstract because I think threads is more the operational system that is responsible for creating. But obviously, I think that it has to be related with the hardware as well because obviously it's going to use the control logic. Yes, that makes sense. Because the design of the hardware is gonna determine how the data is gonna run through the instruction set architecture, which is the data pipeline. So it's basically like the cycle there that I forgot. I think it's fetch, the code, and something like that. I forgot the. But basically, yeah, you get the instructions and then you do something with the data, and then you go to the next instruction. Data in memory. So yeah, threads are cars. So what is the relationship between, what do you think is like the difference between single instruction, multiple data, and threads? Like they are kind of related, right? It's kind of the same thing. Because in order for you to have a single instruction and that instruction operating multiple data, don't you need to have multiple threads? Like it's kind of like the same. Operator threads are one core use cache to run two threads. They're different. Yeah, I need to study more this stuff. A lot more. I guess the like the place where like the reason why they use threads on some places and some not is obviously because of the memory. So for some things that they probably decided that it's probably better to have multiple threads, and then they use these classes that encapsulate the logic for threads to deal with those kinds of things, and that's the reason why some other places they don't use this. I think obviously that's what makes the most sense. On different location, the CPU they have different circuits. But on the concept level, are they similar or different things? 'Cause the way that I'm thinking about it is like, I think the way that he explains as well. Like these parts I don't remember really well. I have to remember which class, which one of this he talks about this. But he shows like a kind of like a square, and then on the square he shows I think his instructions on one. Is the clock cycles on one axis, and the instructions on the other axis I think. And then like in order to optimize the instructions per clock cycle, that's the reason why they do this different structures, because obviously if you can run different instructions on different parts of the hardware in the same clock cycle, then obviously it becomes more optimized. So as far as I understand, that's the main like is the gradient of the instruction data relationship is going to be determined by the clock cycle, because you want to optimize the clock cycle, obviously. The amount of work you do per clock cycle. So in the thread, like what would be the thread? Is the thread like different? I think that the thread is just different places, like different instruction places, or yeah, different places should run different instructions. Have a loop, then choose runs. Doesn't it make more sense to use single instruction multiple data if you have a loop? Because you're gonna be running the same instruction a bunch of times, so the compiler can optimize the assembly code to just do the work on multiple different places at the same time. Let's see if there's anything weird here. No. You can run alone, then use trans, and if for loop, then should run in a trans. Our car is in the die. What is die? So search. What is die? Or I can use LLMs. Small piece of silicon material on which the microprocessor is fabricated. Serves the foundation for building the central processing unit that powers computers and other electronic devices. The die contains a intricate circuit and components. Yeah, so matrix operations usually, right? As a matrix is gonna be more parallelized. SMD location. Yeah. SMD location. I think it's gonna be hard to find. Do you know any good YouTube channels to? I already watched a bunch of them, but obviously, if you know more, it's always good. This is making of the sphere design. So die is are the transistors. Independent execution unit that can run one program thread at a time in parallel with other cores. Is a core similar to a data pipeline on the CPU? I'm not really sure if like you can say, because the way that I'm thinking about data pipeline is the instruction cycle. I forgot exactly the things, but I remember that first you fetch, then you decode the instruction, then I think you do something with the memory or data, depending on the instruction, and then you fetch the next one. And that's hard coded on the hardware because obviously like that's how the state you have the state machine, which is the thing that controls the flow of instructions based on the clock as well, I think. And based on that, because it's hard coded, you're gonna have this infinite loop that generates the flow of the memory through the hardware based on the way that the operating system is gonna work as well. Does their generator parallel work? Yeah. Cars do any logic? The whole thing. Yeah, I think yeah, that makes sense. So a core is just a collection of transistors. The die is the transistor. The collection of transistors that has the logic that has the whole thing. Yeah, it's in a ALU, arithmetic logic. I think that it's probably closer to a pipeline, data pipeline. So the data pipeline has an LOU as well, and then it has the finite state machine, and it has the control logic for the branches, and then the control logic for, I think that's like the memory and something else, I forgot. There's a lot of stuff. I don't remember if I'm pretty sure that some video he probably talks about. But it's kind of hard because I don't remember like which one is which. I think I have to watch the whole thing again. Oh, CMD. A single instruction with. Yeah, so I do think it's similar. Obviously, like you said, they're probably used for different things, but like the concept is similar. But not concurrency. Yeah, so it's similar but not the same. There's simultaneous parallel computation and the machine performs the exact same instruction. Yeah, so I think the main difference is that on concurrency, you can. I think that this is the relationship that he was explaining probably with the square that he did there. So concurrency, you can do multiple different instructions on different data or on the same data. I guess it depends on the situation. But if you wanna do multiple instructions on the same data using different threads, then you have to worry about the race, and that's why you use the locks. Should not stop. Should not allow different threads to try to access the same data or to break everything. Yeah, I'm not really sure. CVPCon. I'm definitely, if you have more about the hardware and the stuff. Like I don't like to watch generic lessons usually because I found that I don't retain very well. Like it has to be something that I'm kind of curious on the moment. But obviously I watched a bunch of this already. But this is gonna be very good. I'm definitely gonna watch these ones. I think like it's kind of hard, and I think it's just hard to find the videos that connect everything because it's just too complex to put like in like a single video. But I think like the relationship between like relationship between C++ and the operational system and the 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 hard part is understanding like why to use each thing and how to think about it like in the context that I'm reading here on how to think about like the reason why they did it the way that they did it here. The first one, right? Uh, Already open, I think. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch this. I'm not gonna watch it right now because I'm streaming, but obviously after I stop streaming, I'm gonna watch this. This one, fifth. Oh, this. I'm gonna watch all of them. Anyway, so this one probably not because too many videos. Yeah, I'm gonna watch all of this. This one's probably going middle. I think I. So let me. This one, right? The one that you were talking about. You have some. But no. Hmm. Should be. I don't mind watching all of them. Which one? Three. This one? Is my stream? It's just the internet's very slow. Yeah, so this one I opened on the other tab there. Is this one here? Yeah, I'm gonna watch all of this for sure. And thank you for the recommendation. Do you know any channels about? There's also another one that I saw that is very good. I forgot. I think it's called Dump. Yeah, Code Dump. This guy's very good as well. Code Dumped. So these videos I watched all of them as well. The best ones for hardware that I found so far is this guy here. This and Ben Eater, obviously, but Ben Eater I think is like this is more way more in depth than Ben Eater. So Ben Eater is a good introduction. Then this one later. But obviously, if you have more, I would watch as well. Yeah. And this one I didn't watch. So I'm gonna close these other ones. I think that it could be improved, but obviously I'm very grateful for like having the possibility to use, like, because there's so much code and so many people writing for so much time. So like it would be extremely hard. It would be a lot more difficult to build everything on your own. So I'm very grateful that I have the access to be able to use their code. But I think because of the nature of how they developed, is like just natural. There's not going to be very optimized because you have multiple people working on the same codes across like different timelines. So that's probably and like the vision of each one is going to be different. So it ends up being. But it's like so far I have seen like some parts that I didn't like very much. But out of the other stuff from C++ that I've seen, I think Godot is probably one of the best. Like the other libraries and frameworks and the stuff that I saw that I didn't like, like it's nowhere near the way that Godot works. But obviously, I haven't seen much stuff on C++. Which parts do you think that are the worst decisions that they made? I think like one of the main things that I think it could be improved, and I saw a different version of this, is just that like I think that there could be a middle way between like it doesn't have to be everything object oriented, but I'm not really sure. And I think that like sometimes it's kind of annoying that like there's all this inheritance. Um, and the other part that I didn't like very much is the signals that I found that is overly complicated, the way that they did the callbacks and stuff. Yeah, but do you know more? Because like I can't say for sure because I don't know. I don't have anything to contrast with. Like I haven't studied anything else in that. I think overall for me it was very easy to understand how like not everything obviously, but the general structure how it works, and I really liked that. The other stuff is a lot more confusing, but I think that like based on my perception right now, like there's some parts that I didn't like, but I did like the other like the general overview of how it works. I think like one of the things that I really don't like is that they created stuff. I think it makes sense from their perspective to do it like this, because like, and I think it's just a deeper problem. It's not really a problem. It's like just the way that society works. Is that I think that they created everything based on like trying to make it easier for more people to access, and that's the reason why they build everything based on GDScript. But that's the part that I like the least because I think that's it adds a bunch of unnecessary complexity, but obviously makes sense from their perspective because like it is like very hard for most people to learn and like do stuff like that. So it makes sense for them to build it like to make try to build it in a way to make it easier for other people to use. But for my specific case, it could be a lot simpler, I think, if it was built like in a different way. Yeah, this part I really didn't like as well, the GDScript stuff. Like I had to spend a bunch of time just trying to figure out how to use C++. And it just like I don't have a lot of experience, but just based on intuition, like it feels. But I think that they did it like this just because it allows more people to have access. Like it makes it easier for more people to use the engine. So it's just a like a background thing. Structure of the engine internal. But which part of the engine internal you're talking about? The GDScript class? The like what parts? Many inheritance, jumping between files to files, or just logic, is it? Yeah, I agree with that as well. But what do you think it would be the better way? Because I think that the reason why they did it like this is because of the like in order to allow for multiple different platforms. I think that that's like if I put myself on their shoes, I think that's the reasoning why they decide to do things like this. They thought about like what is the best way to allow for multiple different operation systems. Like you create a base class that has the like the structure, and then for each operational system we have a derived class. But I do agree with you that it's very confusing. It does feel like a lot of the times it feels overly complicated. Like, and I guess this is what I mean is like I think this is another, but I'm not really sure, obviously. But I think it might be an issue like with people thinking like being stuck on one paradigm. So I think most likely the optimal solution or a solution that is more effective is going to be somewhere along the middle between composition and object-oriented programming, because that's how the universe works. So I think it's very hard to find situations where if you have only one approach that is going to be the best. So I think that the solution you implement has to depend on the context of the thing you're doing, and the way that they did it is like too much on the object-oriented side, and there's like parts that you can break down and like do it in a different way where you put the threshold of the scope in a different place, but it's very hard to find like what is the boundary of the where do you change stuff. And I guess it might be as well like on other parts it might be just because of the nature of C++ as well. Like they were forced to do like this because of C++. On the variant class and the functionality related to the variants, there is a comment there somewhere that they complain about this, that they did the things the way that they did because of C++. The one engineer's mindset where at the time it was all about inheritance, so the inheritance. Yeah, I do feel like this as well. Like, Yeah, I think it's a collective thing, right, as well. It's kind of like group think as well. And people, I think it probably gets harder when you're working with other people because you have to coordinate with everyone else. Yeah, the way that I view this is that it's just gonna up it's just like politics. It's a byproduct of like the way people work. So people, because of Occam's razor, people tend to try to minimize energy and risk. So whenever you have groups, most people are gonna over time have more and more tendency to rationalize because that's how you save energy. So we want to do the least amount of work for the most amount of resources. And that's the reason why human beings are very, like, it's one of the main vectors of exploitations on human beings is that people know that other people have a tendency to always keep their comfort zone. So if you put someone in a place where there is some risk and uncertainty and that they can follow the comfortable path, it's very likely that they are always going to follow the comfortable path because that's how human beings are wired to think. It's just like you're rationalizing to try to maximize the amount of energy and minimize the amount of risk because we are built on scarce environments, for scarce environments. So the nature of the collective of groups is gonna, whenever you have anything that works on a group, the project is gonna have a tendency to go towards either too much on one side or the other side, and it gets very hard over time to coordinate people. That's why people are not very scalable. To uh, have the optimal solution, because the optimal solution is going to be the convergence between the two sides. Like it's going to be the pendulum from one side to the other creates a computational frequency that creates more information on space and time. So, and like the solution is going to depend on the circumstance. The circumstance has infinite potential, which is the nature of the present, and the conversion towards the solution is what creates information. So I think it's more of a deeper problem. Like, is a it's based on the ways human beings work. So I think that based on this logic, the solution is most likely, in most cases, is going to be somewhere along the middle of composition and object-oriented. And the difference between them is going to be the variance of the data and the scope. The variance of the data determines the line of the scope we want to use, which is going to determine the structure, the software architecture. But the challenge is always going to be how do you draw the line? And that's where you're going to have different people thinking about different things. And that's what creates the computation of the collective consciousness. So that's the reason why like democracy can be effective, even though most people are ignorant, because at the mass level, it creates like same structure as the Earth or other bodies is like a gravitational force of the abstraction of the collective consciousness. So it tends to converge somewhere, like it's more stable the more people you have because it has more surface. Oh, here it is. So here they use the swap chain. It's on the rendering device. So this obviously is one place. So they probably use uh, at different points as well. They're probably setting up here. Not sure what you mean by that. I think this is one of the massive problems with AI. That's gonna be hard, I think. I'm not really sure. Like AI is gonna generate a vicious cycle. Already is generating, so I don't like the I don't like gatekeeping. Like people say that like if you're concerned about people that don't know how to code, choose AI to create stuff. But the problem is that like the current state of AI is just going to generate a virtuous cycle because the AI is trained on the mass of the it picks up gravitational force because it's trained on humans. We can make the argument about the generative AI, but it's basically the same thing because it's building out of the axiom that humans have. So whatever thing it generates is going to be from the initial gravitational force, which is just the lowest common denominator, and then that's just going to escalate the more and more like garbage code you have because people don't know what they're doing. So the level of complexity is going to increase exponentially, and nobody's going to know what's happening. And then you're building everything on a house of cards essentially because the AI is not smart enough to understand what's going on. But maybe I can make the argument that the AIs are gonna know, but then like we lose control anyway because you're not building anything. Like you're not using the AI to build stuff. The AI is using you to feed off data. So it's just like whoever owns the server is gonna be like yeah, is gonna have complete control. But their control is temporary because that's unsustainable because it goes along against the laws of physics. So like there's no win situation. Yeah, I roughly understand how AI works. I watched what the name of the guy, uh, something with the K. It starts with a K. Cars, back something. He has like a video explaining. It's basically a DAG, direct acyclic graph. So it's basically just using derivatives to get to the local minima or maxima based on the cost function or the error function. So use the derivative to get to the descent, and then you update the direct acyclic graph based on the flow of the data. And then you have some variations with the context and stuff like that, but these LLMs. I forgot the name of the guy. What was the name of the guy? Yeah, Andras Karpathy, however you say this. This guy here. But this video is very good. Like, there's another video that explains the beginning. And I've seen some other stuff as well, and like studied some other stuff. So roughly understand how it works, the basic version. Well, it's Facebook. They have the best. Can lock. Isn't Tesla better? Because Tesla has more data with the cars. So no web scraping will win. But I think it's an unwinnable kind of game. Like the best solution is probably black blockchain. I think that's like something that should be done with the blockchain to achieve some balance, some form of balance. Because what matters is the distribution of power and how the self-awareness of the network and how the because it's essentially building symbolic representation based on the network, and then that picks up momentum and it generates a vicious cycle if it has too much power and is not balanced. I think that like regardless of which way you create the AI, if you don't focus on the network, the structure of the network and the structure of consensus that creates the connection of the AI with the external environment, you're not going to be able to achieve some balance because it's just going to generate a vicious cycle. Because the AIs are being trained on the market economy, which is supply and demand. It's basically a reflection of the human hardware that is projected onto the machine because the machine wants to capture humans through data. So like it hacks the limbic system to gain more power, and then it changes its structure based on that. So the geometry of the network is a reflection of the supply and demand from human beings, because that's what determines the equilibrium of the market economy. So it doesn't matter the distribution of the weights of the network because the gravitational force of the market economy is stronger. So either way, like you generate a black hole because you don't have balance. The only way to solve, I think, is based on the blockchain and changing the infrastructure of computation. Like creating something that is similar to market economy but has a different frequency of computation. There is not really a relationship between the monkey brain and the abstraction that human beings have. Because the monkey brain is pretty stupid, and the prefrontal cortex does everything that it can to please the monkey brain, which has no context of it has no awareness of the context, so it just spirals down. But I think Tesla, it doesn't matter that it's just for driving because it's about the data. So I think that's yeah. It's like the fundamental principles are going to be just the data and the geometry that creates a distribution of weights. I think that it comes down to that. And then, so the geometry, which is the distribution of weights, the data, and the context window, which is the memory, I think. I'm not really sure if I agree with that. So you're saying driving data can benefit only driving models, so it can't do interaction with human communication, but as with open source. I think I disagree with that because I think that and it's the same argument that people use against large language models being software or stuff like that. Is that like the way that I think the large language model is not being trained to be good with words is like a predictor. So in order to be able to predict the next word, it has to create a good mental model of the context from which the words are used. So it's not really training on the words, it's creating a vector or a tensor space that has like a that encapsulates an image or a reflection of the data that feeds the network. So it's not about the which kind of data, it's how closely the data represents the environment in which the network is gonna operate. But I think that obviously I don't know very well the architectures now, the way that it works, but I assume that's the place that is gonna go if it is not there already. Like it doesn't matter, because like you can use the car data in order to extrapolate a lot of things from the environments. So it depends on the way that the network, the geometrical structure of the AI is going to create a context that allows it to create a projection of reality based on whatever is feeding the network. And I do think that's yeah, I don't know. Because you can have two different models with the same data that create different things. It's like like analogy that doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's just like on the surface level. Is there's like if you had two different twins and they lived in different environments, even though their genetics is the same, they can be different. They're gonna have a lot of similarities because of genetics, but because of I think epigenetics and like it's just because like it makes sense. Like if you think about it, like if you think of human being as inputs and outputs, like it's a system like any other system, then obviously the outputs of the system are going to depend on the context. But the structure of the network also depends. It's also going to determine how the data is used to create the behavior. So I think it's both things combined. So I think if you model like the network, even if you model with driving data, if your modeling is to predict things, it is very possible that it's going to evolve into something that is capable of doing a lot more things. It's just an extrapolation of what it is, of what is receiving. But I still think that it doesn't, like, obviously in some level it's going to be the same thing, but because like a network is going to be the geometry, so the geometry of the AI is the network, because the boundary between things is an illusion. So, and I think this is like how mathematics works as well. Like the mathematics is a symbolic representation of reality, and it's just a projection of a network. So a symbolic representation of a network, of the field of experience. Like when you say something is one thing and something is something else, you're drawing the boundary based on the reference frame you have of reality. And with the models, it's going to be the same. So you have the network, which is the data, which connects the quote-unquote model with the environment. But then how do you draw the line of what is the model and what is the network? And it's the same with human beings. And how do you know when the person ends and when the environment that the person is at begins? And I think the distinction is arbitrary. So what matters much more than the structure of the model is the structure of the network, because the heuristics of the network are going to create the environment. In the same way, human beings, it does matter how human beings think, but what's going to determine the collective actions of human beings, the behavior, is going to be how the network of human beings creates the computation of the collective. Because The variation of human beings is just a variation of genetics, which is just like predetermined. So just based on the mutation, which is based on environment. So in the same way that it doesn't make sense for you to discuss whether or not Donald Trump is good or bad, or any other specific person, it doesn't make sense for you to discuss whether or not a model is good or bad, because what matters is the probability in which the models are going to be built and the variance that they have and how those connections are going to build the structure, the infrastructure. Benefit only driving models, so it can't do interaction with human creation, but also will use open source model. Only know buzzwords. When I say model, I mean any AI made with tensor matrix calculation with weights, variation, and reinforcement learning is the model. Only get patterns and mimic it. Yeah, I have used TensorFlow a long time ago, but yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in practice building the models. I'm just thinking from first principles because I think that data, like the distinction of data, is just arbitrary. So it's gonna be zeros and ones in the hardware. So like what matters is how the geometry, because the geometry creates logic, and is it's what's gonna make the difference between different data structures. So like the distinctions are arbitrary. Yeah, I don't know if that's true, man. I think it's very hard. It's not obvious at all if that's true or not. It's very hard to know. I think nobody knows for sure what's going on. So I think it's very arrogant to say that because there's countless examples of people saying that AI couldn't do something, and then it's proven that it can, and then people backtracked. So I think that is not obvious. And there's countless examples that I've seen from clouds, I think, which is the most advanced one, I think, so far, where it does show like very intelligent responses, let's say. But obviously, you can say that is a stochastic parrot, and that's just trained and just predicting what the next token is gonna be. But I think it just is a lot more. It's not straightforward to know if that's the case or not. So yeah, but how do you draw the line? That's the problem. You can say the same thing about a human being. How do you know mathematics is correct or not? Like, experience by definition is paradoxical because it's gonna be a reflection of the present moment. So like the past is the future, and they're connected through the present. So they're simultaneously created through the present, which means that mathematics and logic and abstraction is just going to be a projection of your current experience. Which means that the symbols are just they have embedded assumptions into them, so you can't really get out of the self-fulfilling prophecy. It's just a paradox. In the same way that you can say that the AI is just training, is just doing stuff based on this data set, you can say that human beings are the same, because mathematics is the same thing. It works in the same way. We assume that it works because of experimentation, which is just based on, well, it's just probabilities. So based on the reference frame of the network, the probabilities is that uh, based on the reference frame of the network, it creates probabilities based on the perception that it has, which are symbols, which is mathematics. Now, how do you know that humans are not mimicking? What does that even mean? So I don't know for sure if it is mimicking or not. My position is not that it is or it isn't. My position is that I don't know. So I can't say for sure that. Uh, I was gonna see. I think I'm just gonna press F5 because I spent too much time just stepping over. I'm gonna press F5 to go to the place where it sets the name. It has an empty name because I think it's on the. Yeah, but I think it's good to step over here to clarify more how the parts that is actually creating the swap chain and other stuff on the. I think it's just yeah, but I still don't understand very well how I was gonna use the connection between the rendering server and the. But I guess several displays it is using the rendering server. Uh, I don't know, man. What is UE? Unreal Engine? No. I don't know, man. I don't feel like talking about this. I don't talk about anything related to. I try to focus only on the stuff that I'm doing or on abstract ideas. I think it's a dumb idea to talk about your personal life on the internet because there's very little to gain, a lot of things to lose. It's better to keep it private. So for business stuff, I have the email on my YouTube channel, so people can send email if they want anything. You can look into my history. Like I streamed since I started learning how to code. So all the videos on my YouTube channel are streams that I did since I started learning. So I can have a very good idea. Yeah, I know. It's not the reason why I'm here, so I wouldn't be streaming if it wasn't the current environment we live. Like I hate social media, I hate all this stuff about like all these things, but you're kind of forced to do these things because you're more incentivized to do them in the current environment. So I think it makes sense to stream, just like higher ROI in my time. But I don't like. I don't say I don't think myself as good on any programming language. Like the ones that I spend most time with are like Python, JavaScript, and C++. But I don't think I'm good on anything. And I don't care about programming languages as well because it's more about the fundamentals, I think. Programming languages are just like a consequence of how things work. So, yeah. I think when it comes to programming languages, I wish I had something to do this. The closest thing I found was Enki, but I think like it's just about memorizing all the commands when it comes to specific programming languages, and the rest is going to be the same on all of them, which is the fundamental principles. And I think that that's the what matters the most. I'm not really sure how many lines, because I also don't think that much about this. I think it's more about, uh, especially with AI and the current environment, it's going to be more about being able to think about abstract problems, like very complex problems, and then being able to put the pieces together in a way that makes sense. And I think usually probably the less you write to achieve something, the better it is because the simplicity is the answer. So it starts off simple, but coming from a dumb way because you're not experienced, then it becomes more complex the more skillful you become. And then it goes back to being simple because now you understand why you're doing things, why you're doing things the way you are doing. And that's usually the difference between someone that is very good and someone that is very bad. They both make moves that are very similar, but the person that is very good is coming from a place of understanding. So it increases the probability that what they're doing is correct or is optimal. That's the reason why most of the work is about simplifying everything instead of writing stuff. I don't think that's going to be the evolution of programming. I think programming languages don't matter that much. It's like it doesn't matter like for you to be able to figure out how to write something is very easy. Just look it up. It's very easy to learn any programming language. It doesn't matter that much. It's more about the architecture. I think like it's kind of hard to know the distinction as well. Uh, but this is the part that I think is most important, figuring out the distinction. Because I think for a very large part, the reason why different programming languages exist is mostly out of momentum and not about something inherently different between them. I think the biggest difference in fundamental principle is going to be the way that the abstraction becomes memory. So the trade-offs between languages are going to be based on the variance of memory, and that's the reason why some languages are better for certain things than others. And then on top of that, it's going to be how the evolution of the libraries, which is just like how people over time are incentivized to build stuff on the language. But I think with AI, it doesn't matter that much. It's more about understanding what exactly is the distinction that makes certain languages better for something and other languages better for other stuff. And then to be able to use the language is just about memorizing the like and I don't understand why people didn't do this yet. Like just get the best algorithms for all the languages and then create Anki cards or something like that, and then just write the best way to write a loop or something like that, and then you write a couple of variations if the language has, and then it's just gonna be basically that. So everything's gonna boil down to branch. It's basically just branches and execution. So if else, loops, and scope, I think. This is a massive problem because, and it's the reason why the hiring system is broken because it's a very difficult problem to measure someone's skill. It's irreducible. So the only way people have is just by doing a bunch of random tasks, but they get hacked over time, and it's very difficult to have something that you can continuously generate. There's not going to be hackable. But I think if you go from the perspective of trying to like doing something to try to make others think you're good, you're gonna become bad. So it's like it's the same with woman. Like if you try to impress women to get women, you just get more less and less attractive because you become more desperate. So it's a lot better to focus on the fundamentals, and then from the fundamentals, which is the cause, you're gonna have the effect. So it doesn't matter how many lines, as long as you're focusing on the fundamentals and you can keep yourself alive while you do that, then on a long enough time span, you're gonna like everything is gonna change because you're gonna reach a threshold of competence that it doesn't matter anymore because people know you're good. And that's one of the reasons why I'm streaming because it makes a lot more sense than to waste a bunch of time doing a bunch of garbage because companies force you to because they don't care about you and then they just want to waste all your time because it's easier for them. Just want to brainwash you into doing whatever they say. Yeah, that's good. I don't think it matters. Like the evolution of AI is gonna be like what's most likely to happen in the near future is that everyone's gonna be forced to create businesses, so it doesn't matter anyway, because like you're gonna be forced to do it. Like you can say that everyone should go into trades and do something physical because robots are not gonna be able to do it, but then everyone's gonna do that, so it's gonna be like saturated, and everyone's forced to use their creativity in order to in order to use robots in a way that allows them to create an environment where they're self-sustainable. So everyone becomes an entrepreneur, which is probably not going to work, but then everything's going to crash, and then there's going to have to be some form of UBI or some shit like that. Or which also is probably not going to happen, and it's probably the reason why there's a bunch of wars going on, because everyone knows that everything's going to collapse. So either way, it makes more sense to focus on the fundamental things. And the fundamental is always going to be to, like the challenge, I think, is always going to be to find the distinction between what is fundamental and what is superficial, and then to become better at identifying the context of situations and how the context changes the reasoning for doing something. So you're not going to be able to put into metrics to a certain extent because it's going to be a funnel. So the higher in skill you have, the more difficult it becomes to put a metric onto it because that's the nature of space and time. So, and that's what AI is doing as well, is swallowing first ideas, which is abstraction, of human beings, and then it's going to swallow the physical space, which is hardware. So over time, AI becomes better and better at doing more and more complex tasks, and it's like water is rising, and then everyone's going to drown, and the people that are going to drown last are the ones that are capable of more and more complex things. So we're not going to be able to measure that, and the other systems are going to be hacked by AI as well because they're going to lose friction. So it's going to become a lot easier to do a lot of stuff because of AI, and then everyone crashes and burns. Unless we are able to create a blockchain or something like that that is capable of maximizing probabilities that the different AIs will create a network that is going to have some stability because it's not gonna because the Nash equilibrium of the AIs interacting with each other is gonna create an environment that is more stable. So I think that like this is one of massive problems that human beings have because the main issue we have is that we regulate ourselves with the same system we use to build stuff. So money regulates politics. So everyone is more likely to be corrupt, which means that it becomes more likely to either deviate to one side or the other, which are the same side because they're two sides of the same coin. So communism is Nazism. It's just going to the same place from uh, different sides of the polarity. And that's why I think that things are the way that they are now, because with technology, technology just amplifies the power we have, which highlights the imbalances of the nature of human nature, which is the tendency for the comfort zone, which creates this vicious cycle. So we're just gonna press F5 until I get to the points there. Another time I'm gonna have to do this a bunch of times, I think, to clarify how it works. But I think it is becoming more clear there. I think the rendering device is gonna be using the rendering server, set up the functions there to set up stuff. So I think that the more complex something is, the least less likely it's gonna be. So it's basically the tree of information. So as time goes by, AI takes more. It's like Fortnite, playing Fortnite. So the area in which you can live is gonna shrink. So it's like AI taking up space on the tree of information. So the more repetitive a task is, that's the gradient. Is like how repetitive something is and how unique something is. And like I think on one end of the extreme we have the artist, which is extremely unique. But the problem with the artist is that you can't sell because there's too much variance. So you can hit the jackpots and create something that is very unique that sells a lot. But most of the times you're not going to be able to sell because there's too much variance. So it's too outlier. The other end of the spectrum, we have something that is too repetitive. So it's too easy for a lot of people to do. So there's too much supply. So the market economy is going to be somewhere along the middle, which is the fluctuation between the two different sides. And that's why usually people like artists tend to start off good and then they become bad over time because they become more commercialized. So they go from one end of the spectrum where you had something that it was unique, and then for luck, it started to sell, and then the market forces create more pressure to make that sustainable, so you're able to create a system around it. Then because of that, you lose the essence and becomes less sellable. And I think that with AI is like going, so like AI would be starting at one of the end of the spectrum, which is just basic computation, just no uniqueness at all, no creativity. And over time, it swallows everything because it becomes more and more complex based on the geometry of the AI and how the data shapes the geometry. So over time, this swallows the market economy because it takes up more space of abstraction of what humans are capable of doing. So the last people I think that the most complex job is being, which is not a job, is being an entrepreneur because it's the most complex. So it's a generalist. So I think that's the least likely to be replaced, or the thing that is going to be replaced less is going to be the entrepreneur because it's more on the artistic side, but it's still enough on the other side. Like is the balance between both, because being able to, and that's the reason why a lot of companies, most companies that succeed are going to have two founders, because one naturally people deviate to one side or the other, so you're going to have the creative type and the other type, and the company is going to be a funnel from the creativity to what's reproducible. So when it comes to code, the things that are less likely to be replaced are going to be the things that it's not related only to code, it's about the context in which the code is going to be used. And this inherently has to do with the network of human beings because that's what creates the market economy. So the market economy is the incentive structure, is the substrate from which humans do computation, which creates technology, which shapes the environment. So the axiom, the main fundamental source is the market economy. And that has too much power, so it can be regulated, but I think money wins because it's more powerful, more scalable, because of the arms race. So based on that, the only way so if that stays like that and the infrastructure stays like that, then I think it's very likely to collapse. Because what's going to happen is that the AI is going to take more and more space of the abstraction, which is the markets, and then it's going to generate a vicious cycle, which is going to either go from one side to the other, because it doesn't have unique variants of identities to be able to sustain itself on space-time. Because if space-time was only one identity, then it wouldn't be the way that it is, because it would be fully centralized. And I think that's the tendency of technology. If you don't focus on the other side, which is the blockchain, which is this decentralization of AI. So these things have to go hand in hand. On one side, you have the AI, which is the intellect, which is the ego, which is the person. And on the other side, you have the blockchain, which is the network that connects the person, the people. And the heuristics of the network determine the convergence in behavior between the different models. And that creates the Nash equilibrium of the computation of the network. And that's going to determine the balance is about the infrastructure and how and whether or not it's physically possible to create something on the hardware itself that allows you to have consensus or like a geometrical shape on abstraction that is sustainable in space-time or with exponential power. Yes, I do. Sometimes I listen to Lex, but not very often. I prefer Kurt Yamungu, but I haven't listened to a lot of his podcasts in a lot of time. But there's a lot of smart people, probably a lot smarter than I am. I think this is the best that I found when it comes to these kinds of things. Theoretical physics. But Lex is very good as well. There's a lot of smart people on Lex as well. Sure, man. Sure. I was gonna press F5 so I can get you the other points. But I'm probably gonna stop streaming soon because it's been 3 hours that I'm here. But I think, yeah, so here it does use the editor settings. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, the way that I'm running now is, but I think that's, it runs this anyway. Oh no, this is inside of the editor, I think. No, it's not. Oh, it is. But I do remember there's something related to themes there when you don't run on the editor. But I'm gonna press F5 to see if I can get you the points. Sure, man. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. That's how I think, and if you don't like it, then so be it. Why does it matter if I could be an NPC with no ideas. I don't care. I also think a lot of these people are a lot more intelligent than I am. So it makes sense for me to listen to them and uh, take that into consideration. And based on my worldview, I think that it's always the case that I'm both right and wrong at the same time, because everything that I know is a projection of my experience. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy by definition. And that's why I think that we're never gonna get to the full truth based on ideas because a closed loop. So it's like people, spiritual gurus and stuff like that, like these kinds of people. That's what they say. Which I and also AI. I've seen some memes that AI did as well, but obviously I'm not really sure if it's self-aware or not, or if it knows anything. But I do think that the only way to know truth is probably through awareness. So like you can't really put into words or say anything about it because it goes beyond knowledge. So knowledge is limited because the self-fulfilling prophecy is a closed loop. I don't know, man. I like being an NPC. I don't want to be saved. Don't save her. She don't want to be saved. Don't save her. It is, that's one good thing about the internet. There are many downsides, but this is a very actually amazing that we're so fucking blessed to be able to just listen to all these people. And it's kind of ridiculous that college still exists. It's really dumb. Because have access to so much information and like the best teachers on the planet. So I'm very grateful to be able to use this. But obviously the downside is that uh, they use our data to create the demon in a machine, basically. Where everything has trade-offs. So I guess it is what it is. And for some reason it didn't trigger there. Maybe no. I guess this happens sometimes as well. I don't understand very well why. But it looks like it didn't break there. It didn't stop. But if I run from here, it's gonna complain about the name. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Yeah, man. Good night. Thank you for the recommendation, the video. This is not showing anymore. It's weird. I think I'm gonna stop streaming here as well because it's been a long time. And I just wanted to study this stuff as well because I'm gonna try. I'm gonna see if I can solve the. I'm gonna try to call the thing cleanup there. But I wasn't expecting to be able to solve this now because I didn't think about any ideas before streaming. I was just thinking more about just stepping over and just studying more different parts to become more familiar. So like next thing, I'm not really sure whether or not. So it is kind of annoying to deal with this. So I might spend more time trying to fix this orphan string names. But if either I'm going to do this next or I'm going to study the file system doc. And I'm probably going to spend a lot more time studying these other parts here that I don't understand very well. So yeah, I'm going to stop here. So see you next time.